charities like Salvation Army and settlement houses and so forth. Today, it's expanded to over 60,000. And I'll comment on that because I was very much engaged in developing a food bank in Hartford, Connecticut in the 1980s because I saw these lines at the few food pantries we had growing right after Ronald Reagan came into office and cut severely a number of the programs that were keeping people just a little bit out of poverty and just a little bit at least able to feed themselves. Those programs got snipped, and as a result, those lines just kept growing. That was the point at which we saw this enormous expansion in our emergency food system. And it's not the fact that I established a food bank is not something I'm particularly proud of, because it represents really a failure on our part as a society to be able to address the underlying causes of hunger and food insecurity. In fact, the norm for Americans has become that food banks is actually the largest collective food charity in the country we've become so dependent on them as a way to feed our fellow citizens. Though most Americans generally know the difference between healthy and unhealthy food, only 15% of us eat the recommended 5 servings a day of fruits and vegetables. And by all indicators, our cooking skills are atrophying. We spend 73 minutes per day, according to people who study these things, eating, but only 32 minutes per day on food preparation and cleanup. 32 minutes a day on food prep and cleanup. Now, I don't know, I spend about 15 to 20 minutes cleaning up myself, but I know I spend a whole lot more than 10 to 15 minutes on food preparation. So we seem to be giving up on that side of our food system. Again, according to the Center for Disease Control, 30% of all teenagers do not eat meals regularly with their families. So by the most generous metrics available in terms of measuring the growth, the impact, the size of this alternative, healthy, sustainable food system, we only see about 10% of it, according to the best research we can find. Only 10% of our food falls into a category of both green, fair, local, and healthy. Only 10%. And how about food safety? We hear about that all the time. I like to paraphrase George Burns. I'm old enough to remember when food was clean and sex was dirty. Now the opposite is true. Think about the recent Salmonella egg scare outbreak about 1.5 years ago that resulted in 500 million eggs being recalled and 1,500 cases of Salmonella poisoning. I see this as being representative of the failure of our industrial food system, a factory farming system that basically puts animals in a very concentrated facilities, very limited space, feeding them just to fatten them. They hardly move around. They don't have access to pastures or being able to roam around outside, dig in the dirt, do anything that animals like to do. They're confined. And that's what our factory systems of food production are doing, our livestock systems of food production are doing. And as a result, that is contributing to these outbreaks of food poisoning. In addition to harming our health, the same places, in this case in the egg incident, are also responsible for 15 years of animal cruelty violations. These have been citations from federal and state and local authorities, animal cruelty violations, surface water pollution, abhorrent working conditions, and worker safety violations. Several of these companies have been cited time and time again on these things. So there's a connection between the threat to our health as well as the threat to the workers, a threat to the animals, and a threat to the environment. And in spite of all this, in spite of the fact that we have increasing evidence that there's problems associated with this industrial food system, the American food industry continues to churn out lots of propaganda, trying to convince us that their food is perfectly fine and we're just a bunch of paranoid nuts. This pamphlet, this little booklet was inside this backpack that was given to all these agricultural legislative chairs, these political leaders. And the pamphlet is from the American Egg Industry. It's an egg association. And it's called American Egg Farming, How We Produce an Abundance of Affordable, Safe Food. Okay, sounds okay. There's a little black and white picture, very, very artistic, of a little egg basket, the kind you would use to go out and pick up your eggs in your backyard chicken coop. I don't think that's the one they would use in the factory farm. But the subtitle is what is revealing, and how animal activists may limit our ability to feed our nation and world. Food activists are limiting our ability to be able to get enough food. Why? We're activists? I thought we were citizens. I thought we had an opportunity to speak up in favor of the kind of food system that we wanted. And if we were nervous about factory farming and this type of food production, don't we have the right to speak up? And why is the industry coming back and mounting this propaganda campaign and labeling us as activists? Well, it's not a harmless kind of banter that's going back and forth. In fact, the egg industry and many other elements of the industrial food system are lining up in our state legislatures trying to push these activists back. In fact, there's legislation before several states, state legislatures, to criminalize photograph taking of any kind of factory farming operation. You may have seen some of the video on YouTube. Some of you may have seen the movie Food, Inc. Some really horrible abuses of animals in factory farm operations and processing facilities. And these were often taken by workers or people who kind of went in as a worker undercover, so to speak, for the Humane Society or other organizations like that, and actually documented animal cruelty, unsafe working conditions, unclean working conditions. If you were to take those photographs in some of these states, you would become a criminal. So that's what they're working on right now. We see this also going on with respect to genetically modified food. Now, this is an interesting area, genetically modified food. I don't know what your position is on it. I'm not entirely sure that I'm against it. You might think I am, but my problem has been that I haven't been presented with any useful evidence around which I can make an informed decision, because that information is never provided in an unbiased way. And even then, even if I was brought into the discussion, or you all were brought into the discussion, it's almost as if the game is over. 90% of all soybean acreage in the United States is now in GMO. 60% of all cotton, 55% of all corn, and the U.S. Department recently approved GMOs for alfalfa, sugar beets, and, of all things, salmon. We were never consulted. We, the citizens, were never consulted. It was the industry that kept pushing this along, primarily Monsanto. Now, some states have actually, some places, people are saying, well, let's have some minimum protection. Let's at least know that if we are a property owner and we live next door to a farm that's using GMO seeds, are we protected from drift, for instance, if it gets into our crops or has some impact on us? And there's plenty of evidence that this does occur. And they tried to pass laws that would give a property owner just a basic protections. And in one case, it was actually in Montana. They were representatives of Monsanto and other biotech companies actually have the right to be able to come onto your premises and search your place to see if you have held on to GMO seeds, in spite of the fact that you're not allowed to do that. You sign a licensing agreement. And this would be the same protection accorded to us under the Constitution against illegal search and seizure. That apparently does not apply when it comes to these kinds of issues. Some states have tried to provide those protections. Every single case they fail. No one's been able to get any kind of laws passed in any state yet that would provide them with some minimum protection. And this kind of action goes into other aspects of our food system as well. In the state of Ohio, the city of Cleveland was was the point where they were going to ban trans fats from food that was sold in restaurants, in the same way that New York City has done just a few years ago. Well, the state of Ohio got wind of this, and they passed what's called preemptive legislation, which says that only the state is allowed to be able to pass laws banning trans fats or make any other regulations with respect to the ingredients in food. In other words, it took away the city and any other locality in Ohio, took away their right to be able to do that. Oklahoma has done the same thing with respect to GMOs, by the way. They said that no city can make such laws, only the state of Oklahoma. Now, it's not the government doing this. I mean, it's the government, yes, ultimately passing the law, but it's the industry itself putting pressure on lawmakers to pass this kind of legislation. And it's precisely because of citizen-led initiatives to take control of our food system that Monsanto puts its chapstick in a bag like this and gets it in front of every single legislative ag chair in the country. Take another example, McDonald's, my favorite. Fighting back against a toy ban. They put little premium toys in their Happy Meals, and in the city of San Francisco, the Board of Supervisors banned that toy because it's been proven that those kind of little premiums lure children into McDonald's and, make mommy and daddy want to buy them buy a Happy Meal. Well, unfortunately, a Happy Meal is not all that happy. It has 640 calories, which is more than half the calories that a child between the ages of 4 and 8 should have on a daily basis. The city in this case was successful. It has banned that premium toy in the Happy Meal. But McDonald's keeps coming back and starts accusing the Board of Supervisors of being the food police, food nannies, food tyrants, all kinds of ways of trying to belittle everything that they, the elected officials of a city who are elected by the citizens of that city, have the right to do. Yet they're called food tyrants. Even in one case, they were called food Nazis. Those are the games, the blaming games or the framing games that the food industry often uses. And what's interesting is that the American public is actually crying out for change.